Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to a new chat strategy and tactics video. So in this video we'll talk about the middle game strategy again, and today's subject will be how to play the middle game with the same colored bishop. So there are of course many positions that you can play in the middle game, but I think one of the specific middle games that you play many times is when you have maybe the light square bishop on the board and your opponent has also the light square bishop on the board, or maybe you have the dark square bishop on the board and your opponent has a dark square bishop on the board. So these positions are happening many times, so I think these positions have to be understood deeper. And today's subject will be also a very nice, beautiful breakthrough tactic that's possible. So we'll sacrifice one pawn in order to create a deeper bad bishop strategy. I'll explain you, of course, what's all about. Maybe you're not understanding what I'm talking about now in the beginning, but we'll see now in a couple of examples how you can create really a massive bad bishop strategy by sacrificing one pawn, and then you continue with a better bishop against our opponent's bad bishop. So the two games that I've prepared here for you today are really cool, beautiful, strategic, but also tactical gameplay by one of the greatest players of all times, Magnus Carlsen. In two of the games that he played here, he applied the same breakthrough motif in order to create this bad bishop strategy. One game is against Fabiano Caruana, and also one game is against Anish Giri. In my opinion, really amazing, immortal games here by Magnus Carlsen. And as usual in our strategy and tactics video, you can also participate actively, and I really wish for you to participate actively, because I'll set up, of course, for you some position, then I'll ask you some questions about the position. I really would love to then maybe to pause the video and try to see the best positional, but also then the best tactical solutions of particular positions that we'll see now in this video. So let's start now with our first game. Well, I really don't want to talk now about the opening strategy too much here. We're having now really a beautiful position, a dynamic position. Notice that Magnus Carlsen is here with the white pieces, Fabiano Caruana is here with the black pieces, and both players have now the same colored bishops on the board. So white is a light square bishop, black is a light square bishop. Both bishops are good, we have to say it. Both bishops are targeting at least something. They're really aggressive here. They're targeting many pieces, many pawns. Both of them have beautiful diagonals, but in order to somehow be better in this game, we have to create a deeper bad bishop strategy. What I mean about it, we have to somehow neutralize maybe one of these bishops. Of course, white is trying to neutralize the bishop by playing the move d4 here. d4 leads, of course, after something like e4 into a bad bishop strategy, because then the bishop is blocked out by its own pawn. But there is a certain positional problem about this move d4. If d4 happens, then of course e4 is happening, and then black could maybe create a massive attack here in the king side. So but Magnus is Magnus, you know. Magnus is one of the greatest players of all times for sure. There's no doubt about it. So Magnus played immediately on this idea to play the move d4. And this is a good choice, because let's see now positional problems here in black's camp. If black continues, of course, with the move e takes d4, this is not good, because it creates a strategic disadvantage. We have now an isolated pawn, isolated d pawn, which is, I think, in this position not so good to have. White has beautiful blockade here. We have talked about also in one of my basics in chat series videos about how to play against the isolated pawn. We can create a blockade, and you see now white doesn't have positional problems, because black will never advance the pawn, and the bishop on b7 is now bad. On the other hand, the light square bishop of white is of course a good piece, because it's attacking again the pawn. So I think mission accomplished in this position for white. But of course Fabiano Caruana didn't play the move e4 now, and now comes the first question here for you to solve. What would you do here? What would you play maybe here knight to e5? Would you play knight to g5? Would you play knight to h4? Maybe knight to d2? What would be now your continuation here? Pause the video and slow down the pace a little bit. Try to really think about this position, and maybe try to see really the best solution. Magnus, of course, found it. It was a beautiful idea. So in my opinion, really, very important now strategy to recognize. Okay, let's see possible continuations. Knight to d2, for instance, if you play this kind of move, or if you play knight to g5, knight to h4, I think the same thing will happen because you can be always kicked away. Or if you play, for instance, something like knight to g5, then you will be kicked away to move h6. If you play knight to h4, then there is the problem that the knight is attacked here indirectly, of course, by the queen. If you retreat here after move e4, if you retreat, pardon me, here to d2, then look at this. With the move h6, you maybe play rook to c1, knight to f8, and suddenly black is now a space advantage on the fourth rank. You can maybe even try knight to f1, but now look at this, knight to e6, g6, and I think in the later stage of the game, maybe even a knight to h7, f5, f4 could happen, g5. So suddenly black is building enormous pressure here, here in the king set, and I think black is much better here. So that's why the best continuation after move e4 is a stunning move knight to e5. And this is now the motif. As we said, we're giving up a pawn in order to create really a beautiful bad bishop strategy. And that's, I think, the pattern, the motif that you should recognize now. Also, we'll talk about this pattern in another example, also beautiful gameplay by Magnus Carlsen, as I said. Now after move e5, knight to e5, we have knight takes e5, d takes e5, rook to e5. But look at this, we can create now a beautiful blockade here in the center of the board. And notice, still the bishop on b7 is really blocked out by its own pawn structure. Now every single piece is targeting now the d5 pawn. In the later stage, of course, we can also include the rook now into the game, and we have gained also a tempo against the rook, because the rook has to now step back. And this is now a very beautiful position that Magnus Carlsen created by jumping on e5, sacrificing a pawn, creating a blockade. From this point on, white is on the attacking side. Black doesn't have time to play on this idea h6, knight to h7, maybe f5, f4, because black is now simply on the reactive side. And that's, I think, the beautiful part about this Magnus Carlsen example here. From rook to e7, we're applying again the principles here, of maximum activity. All pieces have to play. We use simple threat and we play forcing attacking moves. We're playing moves that are simply making our opponent react here. And of course, we have to apply the first principle, which is, of course, including all of the pieces in the attack. So that's why Magnus, of course, first played rook from a to c1, includes now the rook into the game, and is probably trying rook to c5 and continue the pressure against the opponent d5. So I think mission accomplished. So far, in my opinion, this is not game over for black, but at least Magnus created really some madness in the center of the board and has now a good game. In the game, rook to d7 was played, rook to d1, we have h6, a rook to c5, we have a rook to a5, and now rook to a5, queen to a5, and now h3, first creating some breathing spaces for the king. So now king to h7, we have rook to c1, and now rook to c7. So now let's see again the tactical possibilities here. Here Magnus took rook to c7, queen to c7. Now my question is, what should we do here? Should we take out now the pawn on d5, or should we take out now here the pawn on b4? What would you do now in this particular position? Okay. Here, of course, if you pick up the pawn on d5, then you risk that you could maybe get pinned on the d file. Magnus played first queen to b4, and after move queen to c1, now comes a beautiful move by Magnus again, bishop to d1, retreating with the bishop, covering the first rank, but now also creating finally some breathing spaces for the pawn, because the pawn needs to be advanced. And look at this, what Magnus Carlsen created here. Magnus Carlsen created a beautiful strategic element in the endgame, which are two connected pass pawns. So far, they're not really far advanced, they're not making progress so far, but you see now how Magnus is letting them roll now here on the queen side. Fabiano Caruana had really a tough time to make something happen here. And again, bishop to a6, Fabi tried bishop to e2, maybe continuing here further pressure against the bishop on d1. Magnus plays again on this beautiful blockade idea. It's not allowing this pawn to be advanced. In the game, bishop to e2, we have king to h2, getting out of this mess, bishop to d1, and now look at this, after knight to d1, the knight is controlling the b2, f2, and now Fabi didn't know where to attack anymore, because look at this, the knight is also now paralyzed by its own pawns. The knight doesn't have good squares to get back into the game. In the game here, Magnus dropped back to g1, queen to c1, and now b4, look at this, the knight as I said, cannot be included in the game. Fabi tried a risky idea with the move e3, f takes e3, knight to e4. Finally, this piece is playing it up, but now Magnus picks up another pawn, and we have here 3 versus 3 situation and 2 extra pawns from this point on. The game was a one-way ticket. But let's see how the game continued. It was still a tough battle. After move knight to d2, what would you do now? Let's see again a little bit endgame tactics here. What could be your continuation here? Do we really need to drop back with our knight? Do we maybe push the pawn, maybe go with the king to h2? What would you do now in this particular position? Okay, here Magnus plays, of course, first on this idea to create a check after king to h8, queen to g4, connecting everything. Everything is again compact and everything is glued together. We are trying, of course, to push the pawns. So far it's not possible, but we should not be annoyed by this. We will eventually make our progress with the pawn. Of course, there are several tactical solutions that we have to solve, but now when everything is solved, then we'll simply push the pawn. So after move f5, of course, queen to e2, the pawns are still rolling. Of course, knight to e4, queen to e1, we have a queen to a1, and now a5 by Magnus Carlsen. The pawns are making progress. Knight to d6, we have queen to d2, attacking the knight, knight to c4, and now queen to d4. Again, a nice move by Magnus. Magnus would love now to somehow trade off more pieces, even the queens, I think, of the board. If that happens, then of course it's a completely winning endgame here. So we have here queen to c1, we have king to f1, knight to e3, queen to e3, queen to d1, king to f2. Now after a couple of checks here by Fabi, queen to e5 was played by Magnus Carlsen, king to h7, and now king to h2. And from this point on, Magnus had a clear game. No good checks are now possible. He advanced the pawn and eventually won the game. I really don't want to show you now the whole game. That's not the point. The point is that here I think this was a very, very important motif here in the middle game stage. Knight to e5, sacrificing one pawn, creating the blockade with the queen on d4 here, and then simply blocking out here the light square bishop. But now there is a clear target. We are targeting simply the d5 square. Will eventually include the rook into the game, and you see now it was a beautiful, beautiful strategic game here by Magnus Carlsen. So let's see now another example. Again, we have this similar position. Both bishops very active. We have to say it. Bishop on b3, great piece. Bishop on b7, maybe even a better piece. So again, pause the video and try to see now here a motif in order to create here for black a bad bishop strategy. The instructive game that we're following is an amazing, really amazing game here played by Magnus Carlsen against Anish Giri back from 2020. In my opinion, really one of the best games that I've seen by Magnus Carlsen. So as I said, how to again create a similar motif by maybe making some kind of a breakthrough and create a bad bishop strategy, but it's a deeper, again, bad bishop strategy in which black will be left with really, really a messed up piece here on b7. What would you do here? Okay, the position is really not in anyone's favor. So I'm not saying that you will win games because you played maybe on this motif, but it's an interesting, really a must-know idea in the middle game stage. Here again, similar motif like in the previous game, d5. After e takes d5, we play e5, and we create now a really bad bishop strategy. Look at this, then bishop is paralyzed by its own pawn, and now we have a clear target. It's the weak pawn on d5. We have given up temporarily, of course, the pawn, but now after move knight to e4 that Anish Giri played, queen to e1, queen to c7, and now my question is, what would you do here? How to make progress here in this particular position? What's now the best continuation here for white? Now it's very, very important to recognize the follow-up. Very important move. If you don't play it, I think you have huge positional problems, and many of us would maybe even miss it. So pause now, read the video again, and try to see now the positional solution, sort of. Again, I'm pointing out, these are not motifs that make you win games immediately. I'm just telling you about some ideas in the middle game stage. Because it's not so easy, of course, to win chess games. You cannot just maybe create a pattern and then you win it immediately. No, it's a struggle, it's a battle, of course, but now the next couple moves have to be recognized, I think, for sure, because if you don't play them, then you have huge positional problems. So as I said, try to see now the best continuation here for white. Okay, here again, like in the previous example with the queen, when we have created here a blockade on d4, now comes the same pattern. Knight to d4 is the must-know move here, because queen to e4, rook to e4, not possible moves, because after queen to e5, pardon me, then you get f3, and you have to step back with your knight or lose the knight, so this is not working. So knight to d4 creates now a beautiful blockade, but is also preparing maybe here sort of f4 idea, f5, f6, maybe f3, but then h4, h5. So now we have created here a 4, let's see, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 3 pawn majority, and that's the side that we're attacking now. We have a massive attack here on the king side, so we'll simply make progress here. The knight on e5 is a little bit loose now, for a while, but of course, as we said, black can never take it out. If that happens, then f3 is, in my opinion, simply winning the game for white. So in the game, a6 was played by Nxd1. Now h4. This is the way to go. We have to attack now this side of the board. You don't lose precious time here. If you don't react, if you just play around somewhere, if you try maybe something here, then you lose a decisive tempo. With the move h4, h5, we are already announcing a beautiful attack here on the king side. We have rook from c to d8, f3, kicking with the knight dropped back to c5, and now h5. You see, we are letting this pawn roll. Knight to e6. Now, maybe again the question, should we trade off the knight? Should we maybe go somewhere with our knights? What would you do now in this particular continuation? So when we get attacked, of course, one of the basic ideas is to create a counterattack or maybe improve the piece. But obviously, in my opinion, we should not, of course, trade off the knights, because our activity is much better now. Although we're down a pawn, but we should not trade off any pieces anymore in this types of position. So that's why Magnus played the beautiful knight to f5 with the possibility to jump on d6, but also targeting really a weakness here on g7. Now h6 maybe can happen, queen to g3. So it's really a tough game now for Nxd1 to defend. So in the game, d4 was played by Nxd1, rook to d3 by Magnus, continuing the pressure here around the square d4. Knight to c5, attacking the rook. Rook to d4. We have rook takes d4, rook takes d4. So far, nothing is working here. You cannot do it like this week, because we'll simply take it out, and now you get a back rank checkmate here. So this tactic is not working. So very well recognized by Magnus that so far still the e5 pawn is not a warnable square in white's position. So that's why here knight to b3. We have queen to g3 here by Magnus. Magnus creates a counterattack, is now even threatening checkmate immediately on g7. So that's why here Anish played g6, and after a takes b3, rook to d8. Now pause the video again and try to see now the best continuation here for white. This move is even winning immediately. Here there's nothing that can be done against this attack. So as I said, it's a tactical now. It's not a strategic solution of this position now. It's a tactical one, and now white should be winning here for sure. Okay. Notice that the knight is controlling the g7 square, so the king cannot escape on g7. So it creates again the back rank problem, and this gives Magnus Carlsen the opportunity to break and enter with a beautiful e6. This is the way to go, because if queen to g3 happens, of course, then look at this. Rook takes d8, a beautiful queen sacrifice, but checkmate now by white. So after move e6, queen to c1 was now Nxd1's continuation. Of course, also rook to d4 is not working because the queen is hanging. That's the beauty about this breakthrough motif here by Magnus Carlsen. We have queen to c1, we have king to h2, getting out of this mess, rook to d4, and again, my question is, again, pause the video and try to see again the best continuation here for white. What would you do now in this particular position? Okay, here we don't even pick up the rook, although it's probably possible to even pick up the rooks. Probably white is still better, but look at this. Now comes the beautiful idea, e7 by Magnus Carlsen. Really wild stuff. You cannot take out knight, of course, the rook is still hanging, and we are threatening also now the promotion. This pawn is really an annoying one. I think this is now really one of the most annoying pawns of all times. We have now queen to c8 by Anish Giri controlling now the back rank, and now here again beautiful move by Magnus. Queen to e5 here. Magnus is not reacting. Still he doesn't pick up the rook, and he's threatening now the promotion. Here in the game after rook to h4, Magnus played king to g3, although you can also take, I think, immediately the rook, but in this position Anish Giri resigned. So great ideas, I think, here by Magnus Carlsen, introduced to us really great breakthrough motifs. Look at this: d5, e takes d, e5, creating a bad bishop strategy, and then creating a blockade, and now we have really a beautiful continuation like in this example. Let's go back. So d4 was Magnus Carlsen's continuation. e4, of course, by Fabiano Caruana. Fabi had to play now this move, but now a brilliant idea. Knight to e5, knight to e5, d takes e5, and again the blockade, and we have a bad bishop strategy against the bishop on b7, controlling the d5, controlling the d4, including all of the pieces in the attack. Activity, and this was a beautiful also strategic win here by Magnus Carlsen. So great examples, I think, great strategies, in my opinion, really important pattern to recognize in the middle game stage. If you want to know more about chess middle game strategy and about chess tactics, please check out my Basics in Chess series videos, and also my Become a Master in Chess series, in which we have talked about many ideas in the middle game, end game, and also in the opening stage. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say: chess is the best, of course.